We've been having these conversations. Where were you 10 years ago? You sound like your abusive mother. People are going to show up to important conversations late. They are. They're going to be informed at different rates of time. I'm sorry if that's inconvenient and uncomfortable, but get the fuck over it. Those are things that you have to feel in order to build a community.
I would smash the like button a couple hundred times on that video if I could. This is something I've been talking about for a long time. I think my perspective as an ex-Christian, I say ex-evangelical, but I wasn't really evangelical. I was Presbyterian. I was a Calvinist. Long ago, right? I have been in the process of deconstructing for a very, very long time. And I can look back on who I was at 16 and 26 and 36 and now 46. And I can see that progression. I can see the unraveling of my beliefs. I can see the deconstruction and also the tremendous amount of education. I can also see that I've come a long way in those decades, but that should only serve as evidence to me that I've not arrived anywhere yet, but rather that I still have a long way to go, right? Because if I think about myself at, 36, looking back on 26-year-old me, I can be like, wow, look how far I've come. Maybe I'm here. Maybe I've deconstructed. Maybe I've educated myself. And then at 46, I can look back and be like, silly you, at 36, you've come so far between 36 and now. That is evidence of how far you still have to go, right? In 10 years, I will look back on me now and be like, oh, girl, you had a lot to unlearn still. You had a lot of patterns to break. And I think so often, especially for those of us that are on the political left, and maybe if we came from the right, maybe if we've done some deconstructing, we think like, yes, I've arrived. I am enlightened. I have jettisoned my old thinking, and I am now, one of the good ones. I now have right ideas about things. Oh, sorry, my tummy's growling. I hope you can't hear that in the video. I'm super hungry. I missed lunch. But this person said a couple of things in their video that I think are so important for us to remember. One, you may have started deconstructing 10 years ago, but the person that you're like, why aren't you here yet? Why didn't you realize this years ago? Why aren't you as evolved as I am? They may have started deconstructing a year ago or 6 months ago. I see a lot of this on the political left. Like, where were you 5 years ago? Where were you 10 years ago? I cared about this issue before it was cool. I cared about it way before you did. This kind of competitive one-upmanship or expecting this kind of perfection out of people that you're engaging with, past perfection from them. When you don't know their history, you don't know their journey at all. You don't know their starting point. Somebody in my comments the other day, long form social media platform, where I had talked about the famine that is happening in Gaza and how famine is a man-made construct. It is a weapon. It is a war crime. It is an intentional choice to deprive vulnerable people of access to food. It's not an accident. It's not a natural disaster. I could talk about famines all day long. People have so many misconceptions about them. But in the comments of that video, somebody said, why haven't you talked about Gaza before? I've cared about this issue since the 1990s. Where were you? And I was like, first of all, I've talked about this issue for a long time, but no, in the 1990s, when I was like in 10th grade or, 8th grade, I was oblivious to what was happening. Right. You're right. You cared about this before me. Like, do you want a cookie? Do you want a medal? What's your goal here? Is your goal to help those folks? Or is your goal to be like me first? I was first. I'm better than you. I was educated before you. I knew better before you. I cared before you did. Right? Like, what's your goal? What's your goal here? And I know I've gotten flack for being mutuals with a couple of different people on this platform, Aaron Parnas being one of them, because I disagree with some of their politics. And I'm like, I don't think y'all understand. I don't expect everybody to have my exact views on things. And I don't necessarily think that I am more enlightened than other people or more educated. I've spent a long time deconstructing. I'm a deeply flawed person. I have bad takes. I have places where I have gaps in my knowledge, where I'm ignorant, where I still have parts of my worldview shaped by my childhood. It's like, like a white Calvinist kid from a military family. I do have the benefit of having had decades of deconstruction and wanting to educate myself, like earnestly trying to learn and do better. And somebody else might be in a very different place in that journey. They might be just as earnest. I wish I could communicate to people. Other folks are arriving at the party at a different time than you, but maybe you live 2 blocks away and maybe they live 45 minutes away. Or like maybe you had a straight shot in your SUV and they had to take public transit and change buses 4 different times. We're all on a journey and people's deconstruction looks different, and we have to have we have to have space in our communities for people that are in process and are in a different part of that journey than we are. We have to have grace for those folks. We don't have to tolerate their beliefs that are harmful, right? We can communicate to them like, hey, this is a bad take. Hey, I really disagree with you on this. But if they're, we can lead that horse to water, but we can't make it drink. If they're not in a place in their deconstruction journey, whether it's from Zionism or Christianity or, racism, patriarchy, whatever it is, they have to peel back the layers of that onion on their own. They have to be psychologically ready to absorb the information, or they're just not going to receive it in the way that you would hope. And in my experience in decades and decades doing this, is just like, people are going to be ready when they're going to be ready. But we still have to make space for them to be in process. We can't say you can only be with us, you can only be part of our group when you have arrived, when you are perfected enough. And also, like, if you didn't do that perfection of yourself 10 or 20 years ago, then you're shit out of luck. I just so appreciated what this creator said of like, people are going to be late to the party. We need to welcome them to the party whenever they get the invitation and whenever they manage to make the journey and they show up, we need to welcome them. Even if they are, it's supposed to be a black tie affair and they're in blue jeans. They're not quite where we want them to be. They aren't quite presentable. I don't give a shit. They need to be welcomed to the party. And this is why I think there's a difference between like your niche group that is formed around a specific goal and you want to have folks who are very much aligned with you. I think there's a difference between your little club that has a specific purpose versus being in a community with people who have diverse ideas, diverse journeys, diverse backgrounds, are at different places in their process of educating themselves and deconstructing. You have to have room for people to be very, very imperfect and still maintain relationships with them and still organize for the good work that we all need to be doing. We've got to have space for people to just be learning about things for the first time. If we need millions and millions and millions of people to join the pro-democracy movement, the majority of us will have never done activist work before. I don't know about you, this is my first time fighting against fascism in the United States, like outright authoritarian dictator takeover level shit. This is the first time I've ever had to do this kind of work against that kind of terribleness in the United States. So many of us are learning and becoming aware for the first time. So many of us are having to skill build very quickly, and we're going to be clumsy and imperfect. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to hurt each other's feelings. We're going to have imperfect opinions that ruffle other people's feathers. How do we work together? How can we be welcoming and inclusive and have that big tent where we don't agree on much of anything, but we can still be in community with each other for the discrete purpose of stopping fascism, protecting American democracy, and reinstalling a stable government in the United States? And then, how can we take that a little further down the road? What does it look like to be in community with people who are diverse, who are at different places in their journey, who may have problematic opinions? What does it look like to live in a society that is really diverse and diverse in our imperfections? What does that look like? Because America is a place where we're going to be really diverse, where we're not going to see eye to eye, where not everybody's going to be your good, evolved, perfect ally, where not everybody will have deconstructed from the deep, deep indoctrination of their childhood. What does it look like to live with folks like that, to work with folks like that, to be in community with folks like that? Flawed, imperfect people who are in process and may not have gone through the same journey that you did. First of all, let's not presume that we know anything about anybody else's past or trauma or indoctrination, the work that they have done, the work that they still need to do. I think a good first step would be, let's not presume that we know. How do we have a measure of grace for each other and have realistic expectations of imperfect other human beings, and then still organize together, still build community together? I would love your thoughts.